after having done the law of demand, now we can see what is the supply side which has to determine the price, because all this time we have taken prices given, and here we try and understand how price is determined by the use of the supply side of microeconomics. So before I go further, I hope you share this video with your friends and also click the subscribe button. Now, economists do not really have something called as the law of supply. Though we use it, there is nothing as a law of supply. And what we understand in the law of supply is other things remaining the same. The supply of a commodity rises or expands when there is a rise in the price. So unlike the demand, which had a negative relationship with price, here supply has a positive relationship with price. So as the price increases, the supply of goods also, the quantity supplied also will increase. So an upward supply curve depicts a direct relationship between the price and uh, quantity. The diagram is very simple. It is just the opposite of the demand curve. Here you can see on the vertical axis you have price, and on the horizontal axis you have quantity, and you can see the small table there. When the price is 100, 500 units are offered for sale, and as the price comes down to 80, 60, 40 and 20, we also find that the quantity of goods that are being offered for sale continues to fall. At price 20, the quantity that is sold is just 100 units. And if we plot them on a graph, we get an upward sloping curve like the one that we have in the diagram. Now, what is important here is to understand price mechanism. Now, when we were doing the lesson on basic problems of an economy, the question was, how do economies solve their basic problem? What is that one method by which it allocates resources? So there is no one method. We found that the socialist economies use planning as a method to allocate resources, and capitalist economies or market economies use price mechanism to allocate the resources. So here we shall study the price mechanism in a little more detail. Now it will tell us uh, how the economic decisions are taken, or how economic agents take decisions when they interact with each other. So this price itself behaves as a signal, and it has a signaling function. So price adjusts to supply and demand. It adjusts to scarcities and surpluses. So if there are scarcities, the price will behave in a particular way. If there are surpluses, then also price will behave in a particular way. So now we are talking about markets which are competitive. When we study markets, we believe that markets are the interaction between the buyers and sellers of goods and services. It is not necessary that these goods and services are brought and sold only at a physical place. It can happen anywhere. It could mean that, like what we see now, online sales are happening. So that means even at online, there are people who are willing to buy something, then there are economic agents who are willing to sell something. So the buyer and seller are interacting with each other online, and the motives of the buyer and seller are just the opposite. So the buyer would like to buy it at the cheapest price, the seller would like to sell it at the highest price, and the price regulates the plan. So whether the consumer will buy something or not is decided by the price, as much as the seller will decide whether to offer goods for sale or not based on the price that he gets for his commodity. Now let's see what is this concept of equilibrium price. When we have a free interaction of demand and supply, then the price can get settled in a free market economy. And this price and demand can be understood as two opposing factors. They behave just opposite, as I told you. When the price is high, the supply is high. When the price is high, the quantity demanded is low. And equilibrium is a state of rest. It means the demand and the supply, both these economic phenomena can interact with each other and then come to a state of rest. So we say that at the state of rest, there is no excess demand or no excess supply. In a market, competitive market, there is no excess demand or excess supply if the price is right. And Adam Smith had believed that markets are automatically managing itself. There is an automatic working of this free market enterprise. So that is what was the idea of competitive economy, where both are in competition with each other. There are different kinds of competition. We shall look into competition and markets sometime later. So we can see what happens when there is an excess demand or there is an excess supply. Now, point, you can see this curve, the supply curve, as we showed a little earlier. It is an upward sloping curve, and a demand curve is a downward sloping curve. Both the demand and supply curves have interacted at point E, and at point E there is a quantity. PO is the price and QO is a quantity that is purchased. In that particular situation, the market is cleared, or the goods have been sold, or the want has been satisfied by purchasing. The demand has taken place. That means money has been granted and the demand is a market is clear. Now, what can happen if the prices are high? Look at the diagram. In the diagram, what you can see is point H and K. So what is happening at point H and K? At that price level, P2, the quantity demanded is only P2H. Quantity demanded is only P2H, because that's the point at that price, only that much quantity demanded. Whereas at the same price P2, the quantity supplied is P2K. So there is an excess supply of HK. This HK quantity is an excess supply of goods in the market because the prices are considered to be very high. Now take another situation, P1. At P1, the supply is very low. It is only P1F. Because the price is low, the suppliers are not willing to supply goods and the price is only P1F. But, at P1F. But at that price, the quantity demanded is P1G. So there is an excess supply of excess demand of FG because of the low price. And on the top part of the diagram, you have an excess supply, HK. So HK and FG are two positions of one of excess supply and one of excess demand. So there will be swings that can happen. There can be bargaining that can happen. There can be adjustments that can happen. There can be automatic adjustment by the seller. If he can't sell his goods, then he can reduce his price. And if the consumer is in such a demand for that commodity, he may not look for a lower price. He may be accepting the price that is offered. And that is how both the demand and supply will come to an equilibrium where the supply will be equal to demand. So that is at PO, the price at PO and the quantity at QO, and the equilibrium position is at point E. Now, price mechanisms and economies. Now, how do we understand the application of this concept of price mechanism? A socialist economy, though, as I have explained earlier in the economic systems presentation, there are no economies which are purely of the socialistic nature. Though the erstwhile economies which are following pure socialism, the ideology has not moved away from there, but the markets have almost entered into that. But let me take you to what happens in these economies. In an economy which was working on planning, also use price mechanism. How did they use price mechanism? In their case, the price mechanism was used to understand, the prices were used as a signal. And prices could indicate where there is an excess capacity or there is a shortage in the economy. And Oscar Lange was the person who had studied about the methods of using price mechanism in these kind of economies. In a capitalist economy, price is just everything. Everything that economics does is about price. And there are two terms here, demand and supply. Almost all economic activities are decided by price, by the demand side of the story and the supply side of the story. It could be the rent that land, supply of land and demand for land. It could be labor, supply of labor, demand for labor. It could be supply of bank loan or bank money and the demand for bank money, or it could be the demand for profit and therefore the supply of entrepreneurial skill. All of these are dependent upon price, and price is a reward in different forms for the four factors of production. So a free market with a competitive economy depends upon price mechanism to solve all its problems. Then we have what is called as a mixed economy, like Indian economy being a mixed economy. We know here that some sectors are controlled by the government, and many are also in the private sector. So those sectors which are controlled by the government also uses price mechanism, though they use administered prices, or what we at one time they were called as shadow prices. This administered price is a reflection of the market, but not necessarily fully reflective of the market, simply because the government may have certain welfare motives in mind, and based on that, it must have kept the prices low, which might be below the cost of production. For example, when we talk about a cylinder of gas or the railway ticket, in those cases, the prices don't reflect the actual prices of the commodity. So the government may subsidize some of these services, and gas cylinders today are almost in the market price. But at the same time, railway tickets are still not fully into the market price. Some cases, if you can understand, the education sector still has got government funding, and therefore the prices of the fee that one has to pay for government colleges is much below the actual cost of service that has to be provided. So in a mixed economy, a part of it is done by the government, where the government bears a part of the cost of production, and therefore it may not be the price mechanism which works. Whereas in the private sector part of the mixed economy, the entire economy works only on price mechanism. So, did you ever come to know of excess supply in the market? Did you experience that? Did you observe that? Did you read about that? And what was that good? Right? Or did you observe excess demand for some commodity? What happens when there is an excess demand for a commodity? So you can think of what will be the outcome of that. And when you go to buy something in the shop next time, especially not on those supermarkets, but on small shops, find out whether there is some bargaining happening between the buyer and the seller, and how does this bargaining take place. In some shops, they like to avoid that, and you can find fixed prices tags put on the shops. So this is price mechanism. And now the next session we shall study the elasticity of demand. So thank you very much, and I hope that you share this session with your friends, and also click the subscribe button. Okay? And I hope these points are useful to you from the examination.